इतना सा फर्क है कुछ होने में और बहुत कुछ होने में। इतना सा फर्क है एक बार सोच के छोड़ देने में और लग के कर दिखाने में। मान लेने में कि जिंदगी ऐसे ही कटेगी और सुबह 4 बजे उठ के सोचने में ये अभी तो बस शुरुआत है। किसी मैगजीन को हाथ में लेने में और उसी मैगजीन के कवर पेज पे होने में इतना सा ही तो फर्क है। वीआईपी सीट में और उसकी पिछली सीट में इतना सा ही तो फर्क है। वो जिसका मैदान ही खुला आसमान है वही कल जमीन पर तो था। पूछोगे तो बताएगा वो पंछी एक दायरे में सिमटने में और पूरी दुनिया को दायरा बनाने में बस इतना सा फर्क है। एक बार इतना कितना है और इतना है या इतना है और उसी मैगजीन चुनावे का हो जाने कि जहां धरती और आसमान मिलते हैं, ना नगुर से दूर अगर मगर शायद से दूर, वहां भी इस दोनों में फर्क बस इतना सा, इतना धरती और साथ ही आसमान में फर्क बस इतना हो जाने कि जहां अंतर प्रेरणा है, ना नगुर से दूर ये अगर मगर आपकी हम सब वहां भी इस दोनों में फर्क एकदम धरती और एक छलांग, एक बाजी, एक गहरी सांस और एक ललकार खुली हवाओं में कि हाँ मैं बना हूँ, कि हाँ मैं बना हूँ उन ऊंचाइयों के लिए जो ऊंची तो बहुत और एक दल ही नहीं, क्योंकि मुमकिन और नामुमकिन में बस इतना सा फर्क। धूप छांव में फर्क बस इतना सा। तो बस चलिए फ्रैंचाइज इंडिया के साथ ये फर्क मिटा देते हैं। फ्रैंचाइज इंडिया, 20 years of ideas.
Good morning, all, and thank you for joining us for the fifth session of this six-part series called Franstart. The last session was on franchise management, where we covered selection and onboarding of franchisees, opening and launch guidelines, 3 months of incubation period, first audit report, and P&L calculations, 6 months plan for growth, revival plan, adaptation, innovation and implementation, and finally ERR plan. In case you have missed the last session and have any queries on the above topics covered, please get in touch with our teams. Moving on, today's session is about building profitable franchise systems. Before we start, it is my pleasure to share a brief profile of our speaker for today. Mr. Gaurav Marya, the man who needs no introduction, the force behind creating disruptive franchise strategy for thousands of brands, entrepreneur, author, advisor, innovator, and franchising guru. I have known Gaurav sir for almost a decade now and have had the fortune of witnessing him help multiple brands from various industries achieve multifold growth. Mr. Marya is often addressed as father of franchising and is credited with growing and nurturing the franchise industry from when it was a concept known to few to now when every small and big business is looking to utilize this to grow their footprints. Without further delay, I would request Mr. Marya to take over and share his extensive experience of over 3 decades with everyone.
Thank you, Deepak, and welcome, friends, and welcome to the fifth edition of Franstart series. The series we started to help potential franchisors, even existing franchisors, how they can improve their systems and also move towards more sustainable networks. So we've done a lot of things. We've covered from the foundation of franchising, how franchising really works, different models we have discussed about it. We've also talked about the science of franchising. We also talked about the Picasso principle. And also last time I discussed about the detailed franchise management part. Today we are going to cover extension of the management parts. We will get into a little bit more on how to build a profitable system which works for you. And I'll touch upon a lot of things which comes from my lot of practical experiences. And we can make it very interactive. So if you use the Q&A box and keep asking your questions. After this, there would be another series which would happen, which is the last part, where I'll cover on the different models of area franchise, the area developer, different formats which being used by companies to get better penetration and so forth. All the series are available on our Facebook page, so you can go and revisit this. I will strongly insist because people who are coming on the 5th, they might not have the fundamentals clear. So it not be good, useful for you if you're not in continuity. So please go out and visit all those series. There's a lot of content. This content I used to do about 2 days of extensive training, which used to be about 16 hours of training. Now we have shrunk this into about 6 different episodes, and also a lot of knowledge which you can use in your networks. Especially if you are somebody who's just freshly starting a franchise system, it will be very, very useful for you to really use that. So let me share my screen and then we get started. Can you see my screen, Deepak?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so building profitable franchise system, which is chapter 4. We'll get started. So what we're going to cover is essential of franchise system to build a sustainable, profitable, and valuable. This is something which I'm now telling every single franchisor. Just don't run your franchise system. It can be very tiring. It takes a lot out of you. People just keep making franchisees. Some would survive, some would close. If you're not building a sustainable, profitable, and more importantly, valuable business, where tomorrow investors really look at investing into your business, you're not doing enough in that business. So franchise system has to have recurring incomes. This is another big problem which we've seen in franchising. People are in become a sales engine. They continue to sell franchisees, but they don't have recurring incomes coming from their channel. If you're not getting recurring incomes from your franchise, you have something going wrong. You need to revisit the business model and see how you're going to do that. Most profitable and valuable businesses I would see where they create recurring revenues for years to come. And that's where investors like you, because all the venture funds, private equity investors love those kind of companies which can demonstrate predictability of revenues to come from there. And it also creates a lot of profitability element for you and for your stakeholders. And more profitable you are, more you will be doing good service to your franchisees. So essentially, it's very important for franchise organizations to be essentially very much in control over the cash flows and also ensure that they are very, very profitable. So, and also you need to really go work with a lot of strong audits and control. This is something which I keep repeating, that in franchise systems, don't wait for the time to come where a lot of correction has to be done. Start from the day one in terms of your strong audits and controls. So what are we going to cover? How do you really bring a differentiated offering in your product or service? That's very, very important. This is the most essential part, even as part of your designing a business model. One of the areas which Francop and Franchise India would very strongly work on whenever a client comes on board, we really work on this part, because a lot of Me Too franchisers come in the market, right? So if somebody was doing this right, let me create. And I think, look at the space of food. You have hundreds and hundreds of franchisees which have absolutely no differentiation. So people just become a Me Too product. And I've actually launched a lot of companies. I launched India's first laundromat company. And once I launched that laundromat company, we brought an offering what was very, very differentiated in market. And now we have like 10 more Me Too's available in the market, which are trying to do the same thing. And that's what I've seen, that anytime when we brought in a differentiated player in the market, we saw a huge growth in that company, and rest everybody who was a Me Too was not struggling, not able to grow, because there is no differentiation. They just are. Then question is that why would I go to second best or third best or fourth best? Why would I not go with the best? That's something which is, there is no second McDonald or a third McDonald or a fourth McDonald. Actually, if you really want to be, you're either a McDonald or a Burger King or somebody else which has a differentiated product. We'll talk about how you make yourself differentiated in the business. We'll talk also in the depth of royalties, why it is so important, how do you really ensure that, what are the different components of royalties, how do you plan royalties. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the control supply chain. Supply chain is very, very critical, and it should be profit center. We'll talk about in detail on that. We'll also talk about how do you design your organizational structure, which is very leaner and also very tight, controlled organization structure. I'm becoming convinced that if you want to really become a scale company, you need to have a very small but very effective team structure. A very small, you don't have to really spread too thin. Times have gone where we build large organizations which are spread thin and functionality, effectivity was very low. Now is a time where we are seeing that we need to have much more tighter and much more stronger capabilities being built in. Strong training capability, what is objective, why we do training, what kind of training is required. We'll also talk about franchise audits. And finally, we'll talk about the most sensitive part of franchising, which is the relationship management. Managing franchisee relationships is the most sensitive and most demanding part of your franchise journey. Like, this is most ignored, but I have realized that your make or break of any franchise network would be about how you manage the relationships in your franchise network. So let's get started. And if you have questions, keep asking. After every topic I cover, you can go out and ask a question, and I will love to answer that question for you. And it will also help others who've joined in also to get some information. So I call it about 13 odd ways you can stand out and differentiate yourself in your brand strategy. That's very, very important. How your 13 ways, which is very, very important to do that. First is, how do you really bring your pricing right? And how to price? I have seen a lot of brands which come in the market which trying to be cheaper than the next player which is available. And that's the biggest mistake you would do, and price is very important. How do you really position yourself? What do you really want to offer? Sometimes even going higher is more advised. I've given a lot of companies who come to me, even if they're a startup and they have a bigger, stronger competition available in the market, and they have a differentiated product, I say, go on, take a bigger position, take a higher position. And once you take a higher position, you'll find your differentiation. Like, for example, there's a company called Biryani by Kilo. Now, this company, when they came in, they didn't take a commodity approach. Everybody was going in and making it cheaper. They went up. They went up and said, look, we would take our own time to deliver, and we will also charge you higher. When they said higher, it clearly said we are also higher quality, right? So sometimes just going and charging yourself or putting yourself low is not a strategy. Absolutely not a strategy. Sometimes going up and creating bigger value is more important, especially in markets like India, because almost everybody tries to be a value player. And if you really take a position a little higher, then it is great. Find your niche. Why would people come to you over other brands? This is something which almost every brand comes to me. I ask the same question. I say, why you over any other brand? And most of the brand owners find it very difficult to straightforward answer. And they will go around and say, we have better service, we have better that, we have better. Actually, there's, unless and until you have differentiation very clearly spelled out, where is your niche? What you have different to any other player? You see so many Me Too players. There are 50 franchise companies in pharmacy. They all pretty much do the same thing. The same thing that. What is your niche? Why would you be different? Like Apollo, when they came in pharmacy, they launched ATM principle, ATM in franchising, anytime medicine. It was a good story. It was a good story of 24/7 medicine available. So find your niche. After that, a lot of people try to call that ATM thing, which is anytime medicine, but nobody was really Apollo. And Apollo got that clearly niche because no other pharmacy was doing that, and they were differentiator in the business. So find your absolute niche, what you really do that. Be an expert. Create your brand to spell out clear leadership. Being popular is not important. Being spread is not important. Being in leadership position, that's very, very important. And that would need you to demonstrate as a company why you are in that leadership position. What is special about that? And that's something which comes from personalities. Like even like a salon company, I personally feel Javed Habib, in a men's salon particularly category, he created absolute leadership. He demonstrated from the front. He was a hairdresser himself. And he always did that. And he still, I think, continues to do that. And that's why his brand has been able to sustain so long. So he is clearly somebody who knows his job better than anybody else. So he brought a right personality, always demonstrated that nobody knows better than me because I am in the trade. I am the one who does hairdressing myself. A lot of other were just Me Too brands, and they were running from aesthetics and things like that, but not really from the skills which is required. Actually, why you go to a salon? You go for a great haircut. That skill has to be demonstrated rather than your aesthetics, your design, your interiors. That has no importance. That's why I like Javed Habib's brand, because it's gone to about 800 odd franchisees, and a lot of other players are struggling even to get their answer done because he was leading clearly from a leadership. Unique consumer purchase experience, how customer is purchasing you, what differentiation it is creating for an target. It can be any kind of a differentiation. We all know the story of Domino's 30-minute delivery, right? That's how this organization became global and very, very successful. Very clearly, they felt that that was a clear niche. It was just not about the quality of product. Quality was still, reasonable, but the speed of delivery was very clearly the answer which Domino wanted to clearly create. What is the last differentiated structure of your purchase experience? Unique brand collaterals and communication, also very different, because a lot of people, if you really see their communication, like there are like 50 burger brands out there which are homegrown, they pretty much look same. They have the same photo shots, they have the same structure, they have no differentiation. They have no structure. But if you really learn from these international organizations, almost everybody stands out completely. They have their own maybe mascot or a shock value or something which is very clearly cutting out. And you can say, oh, this is different. This is something which is very good. And more different you are, more you will get your own opinion makers who start coming to you. So that's very, very important to understand how you really create a differentiation in your entire thing. All these things, a Frank Cop would work very, very closely with the client. Define your legacy, heritage, and source. This is also very important. Like I'm working on a company which is, a mineral water based brand, which we're now trying to take it everywhere. And they're actually sourcing it from close to Ganga, one of the best places from there. And we are trying to do this whole sourcing element in that. How do we create that niche? How do we produce that? There is a lot of sentiments along with this water which comes from sources or patches of Ganga. So there is that piece. It's becoming very well. I work with the one company which I relaunched. Launched came from heritage, called Kakeda Dhaba. And this was just a one store out of Connaught Place. And when they started, they had no idea. They were just telling it. And we built the whole history behind it. That similarly we did with Kareem's. Again, we brought in the legacy of the brand, how it started from Jama Masjid, what is the background, who were the chefs for the Mughals, and a lot of these things. So if you really see, people like that. People like this legacy, heritage, sourcing, where it is, why it is so important. Like look at these brands from Italy or France, or even now UK. They have used this very clearly. So the destination, anything which written Paris on down, it becomes more fashionable. Anything which writes Milan and down becomes more quality. So you really clearly see how companies have really used that. But why Indian brands would not use? Why New Delhi would not be so important to being a French or a Paris or a Milan or something like that? So we need to really see also sometimes when we're doing a brand positioning, how can we really do that? Sometimes even you are a heritage brand out of a particular city, you need to really celebrate that part. So that's very important. Innovative offering in terms of how do you really define category and simplify the problem, right? So we have created a lot of category brands. I love creating categories because I feel that whenever you create a category, people just fall from that. Even in niche, like I look at, a lot of other brands. We created a company called Belgium Waffle. We worked with them. And that was a company which first came in and said, I'm a waffle brand, right? Very clearly waffle brand. Waffle was a very clear niche. Look at this company. This company went to about 250 odd stores, and a lot of other Me Too who came in after that, all struggling. Almost all of us struggling. Most of them are closing down, but this brand continues to still survive. If you have a particular leadership in anything which you do, go and claim your leadership. That's very, very important. Claim your leadership, continue to talk about that, and you will see that you will get your own audience, and rest everybody has to follow you. That's very important. Make it convenient, consistent over delivery to your customer service consistently. It doesn't happen in one slogan. It doesn't happen in, I think if you consistently go out and repeat to your customer and keep reminding that you are good at this, they would start becoming your kind of a subscribers. And that's how it happens. You get a chance with a customer, continue to repeat that, continue to repeat it. This is kind of culture which even I've done in franchise India. Like when we started this digital webinars for last 14 odd months, not even a single day have gone, because we have done consistently. A lot of people try to copy that, but they don't not able to do that because they will do sometimes, they will not be able to do other times. If you are somebody who becomes extremely predictable, you get your subscriber base which starts loving your brand and so on and so forth. Tell your brand story. This is very important. How you evolved, how it started. Sometimes young brands also have a great brand story. How they came up, how they were really evolved. What was the problem they're trying to solve? All this is very, very important for people to do. Sometimes there is an investor who connects with you in the same manner, because if I was also trying to solve the same problem, I also saw the same concern. And because of listening to your brand story, I want to connect with you. This is something which founders are doing it. If you see LinkedIn today, is actually become a great platform for founders to talk about their brand story. They continue to share their brand story, what the brand stands for, and they would build a lot of confidence in the investor groups. And slowly investors start following them, and suddenly they don't know when they get attached to the brand and want to invest in the brand. That's how most of the good franchisors are these days working. They're bringing up a story out there. They're telling about their story, what their journey is, how they want to really take that journey ahead, and so on and so forth. So founders need to lead the brand story themselves directly. More you lead that, more you will see your followers will start coming to you. Make an emotional connect, personalization. Very important. How do you really connect emotionally with your customer base? And how your franchise brands really spell that. Franchising has a difficulty because you have first you're communicating to your franchisee is communicating to your employees, his employees, and employees are communicating to the customer. How do you want to make it this seamless? And how do you really make sure that the emotional connect is delivered directly to your customer? And that would mean that emotional connect should be there in the franchisee's employees, which are connecting with the customer. Unless and until they are emotional, they will never deliver those emotions. That's very, very important part of it. And this is a big disconnect. This is a big disconnect happens because by the time this comes in, it becomes here commoditized, no emotional connect with the customer, and customer gets no feel about the brand. And this is something which great organizations have championed it over the years. And I'll talk about how you really do this. Community association has become a very important aspect, especially with this COVID and everything else. Very, very important aspect is, what do you stand for community? And there is anyway the big story of ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance story, which is very important. So how you give back. Like, I love the brand called Tom's. Every time you bought anything from Tom's, they would give one same pair in Africa or something like that. While this is more addressing the global issues, but even if you are making a local brand, you are only regional in nature. Do your community connect? If you're not connected with community, you're not talking about environment, you're not talking about social responsibility, then it will not work. So anything which talks about that actually becomes closer to the customer today. So a lot of brands are there, especially consumer brands. They don't really talk about it. They don't make that last mile effort to really connect with that. Even if you've taken some kind of a recycling approach, or you've taken some kind of a, materials which can be recycled and used in that, I think something you stand for very clearly is communicating for better communities. That something is so very powerful today. Very, very powerful today. It's not really for the large companies. Rather, I would say it is for local companies to really be connected more with their communities. And you'll see the power of this. This is nothing better than that. Like this campaign going on these days on LinkedIn by Dettol, which is a campaign where they are recognizing people who contributed in this difficult times in COVID, and they would come with a picture of that person. So imagine if you has anything gone to your customer with their picture or something which that you care about them, it has much bigger impact than anything else you would do. Limited availability also very clearly. Sometime when you're a niche brand, don't overspread yourself. Keep your exclusivity there. Let the franchisee enjoy that exclusivity, because you were very exclusive in that sense. Like a Hard Rock Cafe. Hard Rock Cafe had a rule that they don't want to open up a second unit in a particular city. So if they go to city, there would always be one location only. And they gave that privilege to the franchisee and say, you are the boss of the city. Anybody who wants to really celebrate, do anything, they have to come down to you, because we are a destination place. So depending on where you are, this might not be eligible for companies which have a very large spread required or a large distributions required, but give the space to your franchisee that they are able to enjoy that availability or exclusivity at that particular region, and claim quality. Everything you deliver to the entire thing, you need to go and claim. Customer is not going to come to and say, I appreciate your quality. You need to go and claim that. And you, by the time you stand for it, that would become synonymous for your brand. So you need to really go out and quality. Anything you do, you might be making something very good, and you have to go out and shout at that entire thing and say, this is what I do best. And take that positioning, claim your quality assurance, and continue to repeat that. And if you are delivering close to what you claim, the customer would start liking it. It's very, very important to really understand your brand strategy, especially for franchise brands. Franchise brands are very, India, we see a lot of Me Too brands. They don't really differentiate. Even if you look at larger companies, this problem lies. Today, look at a lot of fashion brands coming in the market, which are Indian stable. I don't want to particularly name a particular company, but they're pretty similar. They're similar because they're coming from the space. But when you see these international brands, they all have very different approach. If you look at Tommy Hilfiger, very clearly an Americana aspect, very clearly the red and blue kind of aspect, very clear differentiation. They stay there in that structure. But a lot of other fashion brands in India which have no connectivity. When you look at low cost, you look at sport, you look at French, you look at aesthetics. So a lot of clear communication which stays across, and they become very honest about what they stand for. And that's why they get the premium. That's why they get the customer base, which is so loyal to them. But a lot of times in India, we feel that some brands really don't put focus on that. So if you are starting your franchise journey, the first and foremost important is what is your overall brand strategy and how you are creating that stronger differentiation in terms of what your offering is going to be. Now let's go on the royalties and other incomes. Very important. Royalties would range from 2% to 20% depending on industry, margins, and ongoing sport. Very clearly understand it would differ from industry to industry. It will differ the margins you carry in the business model, and also would differ from the ongoing sport. Rather, I always say the royalty is directly proportionate to the ongoing sport. If it is not proportionate, it would become a liability for a franchisee, and he will start somewhere not appreciating that you charge it. It has to be proportionate, and how you clearly define that. Some of the key factors which you need to be very clear about the royalties: never link the royalties with business performance. This is a mistake a lot of early franchisers would do, that they would say, oh, I will see your profitability, then only I'll charge you royalty. The day you made this statement, you will never get royalty from the franchisee, because you have actually linked it now with the business performance, and business performance is actually not your responsibility. It's actually a responsibility of the franchisee, and it's impossible for a franchisor to go and see absolutely profitability of a franchisee, because his books are managed best by the franchisee themselves, how they efficiently they are running the business. Sometimes businesses are not very efficiently run, hence there is no profitability, hence you will never get royalty. So never link this with business performance or profitability as a word. Franchisee royalties are linked on the top lines of the sales, not with bottom lines. That's one fundamental, very, very clear. Never make it variable. Never put these structures and say, up to 2 lakh rupees of sales, I will charge this much. I have 5 lakh rupees sales, I'll charge this much. And so these innovative things which sometimes finance guys make is all rubbish. It should not be done that, because this would also start making issues of lesser reporting and things of that nature. So people will stop reporting beyond that, because they know that at an incremental stage you would have to pay higher royalties and things like that. Rather, I'm more believer of charging a lower slab but keeping it fixed. That's I'm believer of. I'm not really a believer of going up and trying to bring it down. That doesn't work. Be very realistic from the day one what you can really get and what is best for your franchisee to pay. And then there is no question, no discussion after that. Never run waivers for a long period. Sometimes, like this COVID period came in, you have to do a waiver for 2 months. But if you do it for a long period, it becomes a habit. It's something which they don't see in their books. And when it comes as a component, it looks like a big expense, then they don't want to pay it. And most of the issues really start from there. I've seen business which are profitable really going out of the company because of this issue of not paying the royalties. Encourage franchisees to make timely payments. If you encourage them, reward them, people who are very regular, give them encouragement of why they, if they paid on time and they're always on time, what kind of benefits they get out of it. It's very important to build this as a culture, so that you start really getting appreciated of, you don't have to ask, they are very clearly giving the payments in the right sense. Royalty payments, especially in the service businesses, because royalties are often charged in the service businesses, is a very, very important component to see your business, is it valuable or not. I have seen a lot of franchisors who have no royalty incomes. They only depend on upfront franchise fees. Upfront franchise fees is good for them, but they're not building value. And that's where it stops. I mean, and they continue to do that. The sport cost is increasing. They have to sell even more franchises to survive, even more franchises to survive, and eventually they have to die and decline the business model. So you need to really see, even if you have a smaller network, that's fine, but it has to have a recurring income model, which is very, very important. Another area which is advertisement fund. I see a lot of franchise model where there is no component of advertisement fund. You need to clearly define that, because this is the expectation your franchisee has, that you will do a lot of things at the national marketing and things like that, and maybe on the social activations, your brand marketing, brand development. But if you don't have that fund being incorporated and very clearly define that, I will put these royalties as separate and advertisement levy as a separate. And advertisement levy can also have, tomorrow you can create maybe a small advisory team, fund advisory team, which can have maybe 3 members from the franchisor and 3 chosen franchisees to also be part of that. They can all brainstorm and say how this fund has to be used, what kind of activations you need to do. If you do it in isolation with not involving the franchisee committee, then you can have challenges on that. So you need to really see that how you can really take their buying in also, so that they also appreciate that this is something which is important. Then also technology. Technology also should be charged to a franchisee, because technology is a constant upgradation and investment. Sometimes early stage franchisee will say, I give you software free and this and that, but they have no money to continue to upgrade that. That's also very important, that you clearly define what it's going to cost you over the time. If it doesn't sit in the PL of you and your franchisee, it would eventually become a cost side for either side. And that's very, very important, that you clearly define those numbers very well. We work with all the franchisers to clearly define how they should place the royalty. Sometimes the wrong calculation of royalty. Sometimes franchisers also come with what I can get best, and they try to overcharge the royalties. And I've seen some businesses like food companies. Some of food companies have ridiculous royalty structures. They will run on a 12%, 15%. No business can survive at 12, 15% with royalties being structured. So initial good days, you might get a franchisee to pay for it, but later when the business is declining, the franchisee would quit. Look at what happened with the company called Caventers. Caventers was a classic example of that. A big hype, sales were running at small kiosks were also doing 15, 20 lakh rupees, high royalties were charged, and suddenly the sales declined because there's no excitement left in the business model, and the whole brand excitement story was dying. And suddenly this became a huge issues, and the franchises started closing up. They closed a lot of franchises across India. It was not that brand was not great, a product was not great. This is wrong expectation with the franchisee and the franchisor. Sure. Now let's we get into supply chain. Supply chain is the most integral part of your sustainability of network. Very, very important part and most neglected part in a franchise business model. And sometimes overdoing the supply chain is also wrong. You cannot produce everything yourself. You need to have a good vendors and suppliers with you. But controlling the whole ecosystem is your responsibility as a franchisor. All critical supplies must be centralized or from approved vendors. Not necessarily you try to do everything. You cannot start manufacturing everything yourself just because you want to really be part of it. You should really be working with active approved vendors. Like good example is a company like McDonald's. All approved vendors they work with. They really actually work with growing their vendor base, growing even the vendors to go to expectation of McDonald's, but they don't try to do it themselves. That's a mistake. There would be always temptation in McDonald's Corporation and say, let's produce our own burgers, let's produce our own patties, let's produce our own. So this would be temptation, but they don't want to do it. They keep the vendors there, uplift the vendor also, that the vendor also appreciates and come to the quality levels of this. And they focus on the core. Their focus is about delivering a great experience, but they would create their vendor. Sign all non-compete with your vendors. Very, very important. I'm working with the one Spanish company to bring them to India. And last 1 month, we are only selecting vendors and signing strong, stringent contracts that the vendor understand that they need to not compete with their competing brand or directly deal with the franchisees and so on. So some vendors go directly and try supplying to the franchisee. That's mistake. So you need to really see that your vendor contracts are very well defined. And this is one of the areas which FranCorp also works with you. Be firm and flexible. Brand experience is non-negotiable, which means when I call firm and flexible, things which can disturb your brand should never be allowed for a franchisee to local source. For example, packaging, your bags and things like that. If you try to say that this is a bulky and the commodity product, so otherwise franchisee would say, let me source it locally. I will get it much cheaper than what you're sending me. But it's non-negotiable. It's absolutely non-negotiable. Look at from the industry, this watch industry. I've worked very closely in the watch industry to bring a lot of international luxury brands to India. They don't allow any change. If you go to even a generic multi-brand watch store, say you go to Kapoor watch company, which is a popular watch company in Delhi, and you buy a Redo. When they have to sell you Redo, experience of Redo would be completely in line. The box, the bag, everything would be Redo. So they want to really control entire experience journey. That's non-negotiable. Imagine you're coming out with the Kapoor watch company and buying a Redo box inside that. That doesn't go with any watch company. They are so stringent that they want to really control the entire brand experience on that. That's non-negotiable. And sometimes they have to pay, franchisees have to pay a very high price for it because it's a bulky product, shipments and all that takes the price up. But these are non-negotiable things for them. Flexible are things which are local purchase, like some raw material which is locally better to purchase. Then you will also work with the franchisee to do that and continue to audit regularly. But you have to continue to work on improving the pricing, Because sometimes when you start, your economy of scale are not there and you're charging a little higher. Franchisee is not appreciating, but you are telling franchisee that I will continue to work to bring the price down as we hit the economy of scale. Make it convenient. This is another area why supply chain franchises go out and start sourcing locally. It's not about that they were not really happy of giving you the price. It's not so much a price differentiation. It's about predictability. I ordered you something today and you gave me 2 weeks after that, and my downtime started. I lost a lot of customers because I didn't have that. That is the one thing which tempts a franchisee to start doing entirely. So you need to bring predictability. And this also happens because franchisee doesn't know when to order. So they go down when they're almost done and over, say, I'm running out of stock tomorrow. I'll in the evening today and go to a franchisor and say, I need the stock. And then I will start crying and say, I would need to have this situation right away. I'm losing customers, send it by air, send it by. So this all is wrong. It's all about not defining your predictability of your supply chain, how the availability has to be there. And so it should give the comfort. Very clearly work out that structure, when the order cycles have to happen, when the money has to come in, how much time it will take for you to procure, how much you need to what I call keep stock in hand. So all that pieces are extremely, extremely important. Keep your supply chain as a profit center as a cost versus cost center. This is another mistake a lot of franchises do because they're making a lot of money in selling franchise royalties. They feel that this sport should come from me, and eventually it become a cost center. And when you have cost center, you're not able to maintain it properly. If it is a profit center, you make maybe small money in doing this, but it should be a profit center for a franchisor. Quality and long-term approach. Give your franchisee a sensibility that you are doing this because you want to ensure a long-term quality. Long-term quality is very, very important. An effective supply chain helps sales forecast. That's also very important. Like if you know how much supplies you've done, you would also know how much sales is going on in a franchise. That's very, very important because you would know how much is the usage of a customer group. And this is something which everybody used to do. You know, in Cafe Coffee Day for years, if you go and ask for another cup just free because you want to share, they will not give you. That's non-negotiable for them because they know that every cup is a sale to them. And this would bring in also a lot of audits for you, for your franchisee and a franchisee for their staff to make sure that this supply chain really gives you them all the predictability of the sales cycle. So they know how much has been sold on the business model. So these are very important aspects of supply chain. Now, how do you really design organizational structure? I would say don't have a very large teams. Keep leaner teams. Maybe the entire organization, if I have to design a franchise organization, apart from some what I call support structures like HR and other areas, I will put the entire team into about these 9 different heads. These 9 heads are franchisee facing and they are process leaders. Everybody drives the process and they have to be franchisee facing roles. Build culture of improving franchisee performance is the only objective. So all your franchise teams might see different roles, but bring them together and say we collectively as one team has only one role, which is the improving franchisee performance. Improving franchisee performance is the only objective for all these teams. Keep the service attitude. They need to be in the servicing attitude towards their franchisee, but with authority. Otherwise they become complaint boxes. They just are recording complaints if they don't have authority. So while I have a service attitude, I would like to service you what you want, but I also have authority that I drive what needs to be done in your business. That's very, very important. Encourage your weekly reports. So departments would be franchise sales. You will need to have a new franchisee opening team. You need to have a franchise development team. You need to have a head of training. You need to have a head of audit. You need to have a supply chain head, a head of brand communication, very, very important. And brand communication should not be a backward function. It should very closely interact with your franchisee. Very, very important aspect in your franchisee performance and strategy building up, because every location is unique. Every location has a different demand structure, very unique. Commercial and finance head, very, very important function because of especially royalties, supply chain, reconciliation of accounts and everything, and head of technology, which needs to be done. So these are 9 departments which you would need to have in your system to really ensure that your franchise system works well. Then let's understand training. This is some of the observations I have over the years. Only 40% of franchisees agree with their franchisor leadership team that has a clear strategy to protect the future of their network, which means they don't agree on the strategy itself, right? Imagine only 40% agree, 60% are not even the agreement with the franchisor strategy, how they're going to be taking this network ahead, which means that they don't even agree on the way your strategy or your initiatives have been taken for the network to grow and die. This is a serious thing to happen, because they're not even in agreement in terms of your business philosophy. That's very, very important. Only 30% or less agree their network is staying fresh and innovative, which means most of the franchisees, 30% or less, which means 70% and more franchisee don't feel that the network is fresh or growing or has been innovative. So they're already feeling the fatigue. They're already feeling the fatigue that this is going nowhere, or this just struggling or surviving. Only 40% or less feel the value of ongoing support. Even if you're giving good support, 40% are only saying that they are happy with the kind of support, because their expectation is not met, or something would have happened which has stayed with them very strongly, that they have now built an opinion that the sport is not good enough. The sport is not good enough. Only 30% or less feel that there is a fair pricing in the supplies and its effectiveness. So all the supplies which are coming to that, they feel that this is fair pricing. They would otherwise, 70% or more would feel that the pricing is not fair. And only 20% or less actually live the brand. Now, this is very unfortunate, that you have given a brand to somebody else as a franchisor, and they have actually paid money to hold the brand, but only 20% or less actually feel and live the brand. Now, this all are problem areas of franchising. Sometimes when we're designing training, we don't really understand what is the gap area, and we just try to create another functional role in the business. Functional role would be onboarding of a franchisee, training his team, putting them in structure. But if you look at these statements which I've made, none of that really talks about that people have not been trained in tactics. What is the biggest gap? The missing is the culture. Culture itself is not delivered. So you've delivered everything in terms of a very tactical approach to entire thing, that, oh, I've trained you on this, I know how to use a machinery, I've told you this and I've told you that. But if you really see, none of this above actually is all about that. It's about the culture. And training, unless and until fails to deliver that culture, has not delivered anything. Unless and until you are not able to deliver, unless and until people start working from a last line, I said, they start living the brand. They are appreciable of whatever you're doing. They understand why the supplies come at that price. So everything is all about culture, culture of belief, culture of giving. So all these are very, very important aspects, and sometimes most ignored in the system. So invest into training capabilities. Very, very strong investment needs to be done. And a good franchisor and a good CEO of any organization would have to really spend maximum time in this part. This is very, very important. And this is one of the big differences in Indian franchise industry. And I want to really focus a lot on that part, because I think I've seen other great businesses, great brands. But if you really go out and survey their franchisees, they're making money, but all these points are irrelevant. 20% of them don't even bother. I mean, even the signage is broken. They don't care. They don't care because they don't live the brand. It's not their brand. They always feel that this is not my brand. Why should I spend on that? So it's not really, they've taken the business and they're only interested in the tactical return on that capital which they're doing it, but they are not living that brand. And this is something which is missing. When you start a place, and I've visited a lot of franchise brands and franchisees, everything looks beautiful. Everything from your, even the doormats takes your brand, and everything is all branded inside and entire thing. And when you are visiting the same business after 1 year, everything is changed. Everything is just broken. Everything is no value. And that shows that there is no commitment, no living entire thing. And this might not true if you run your own business. You always look after your entire thing. If you're looking after, and end of the day, that's a psychological thinking which you need to bring in, that eventually a franchisee needs to understand this is your brand. You've paid hard-earned money to get this brand. You need to live this brand. And this all comes from culture. And I think great organizations I've seen really invest into building that culture. That's very, very important aspect of your essential of franchise sustainability and network. Now, franchise audit is to bring in accountability and specific focus areas because as every franchisee is a different situation and a different need. Very, very important aspect you need to understand that every franchisee is different. While you have same structure, you give it everybody, but every single franchisee extremely, extremely unique. So what is the need of audit? It brings an engagement with the franchisees. Franchisee feels more engaged to discover their own business. They've never got a chance to discover their own business, but if you work along with them, which I told in the last presentation also, if you work along with them, they feel more engaged in their business. Different franchisee, different execution style, and different need gap. So some franchisees have different execution structure. They are very different in when they approach their teams, when they approach their customers. So they might have a different need gap also. So unless and until you have done early audits to understand a particular franchisee has what kind of need gap and you need to work on that. Franchisee is also your brand reflection. If you don't really continue to work on skilling your franchisee up and auditing him and telling him where the things are wrong, would be also deterrent on your brand performance. I've seen a lot of times when early days franchising is going on, it is easy to sell franchises. It continue to go up, up, up. And at a certain level, a franchisors would come to us and say, I'm finding it hard to sell franchises further. Now, what has happened? Because you have now a lot of big network which is staying with you, is not going out, but it is not reflecting the best of your brand, right? So the new franchisees will go to your stores. Like today, for example, you are an ice cream brand and you have 100 stores already running. So you're in almost every neighborhood. Now you are more available, more exposed. When you are more available and more exposed, even if you try to get a new franchisee all the gyan in the boardroom, he will step out and he find his store and try to do that. If the brand experience was not intact, he will drop that idea away. So a collective impression would start coming in, and it can be very, very, dangerous for a for a franchisor if this all is not very connected and also not giving a collective brand experience. How to report and put an action plan, put a corrective and progressive action plan, set mutual accountability, follow strict guidelines with your franchise. You need to chase them out. If you found some gaps in that thing, chase them out every single day, bring them to accountability. And if you find that regular audits you've done and the repeated gaps are continue to be repeated in their system, then you need to serve the notice for cure. Notice to cure is normally 15 days, 21 days, sometime 1 month, sometime 2 months, also depending on the business and so on forth. And if it is not still done, it is followed by termination. This is something which I feel the franchisor very early on have to start. And I can tell you, not only, the percentage of companies doing this would be less than 1%. If 100 franchises are there in the market, less than 1% have a proper audit capabilities in the system. So they will not do forthcoming and right audit. They would be very reactive. If you ask a franchisor what you need, what is a challenge, they would give you solutions, but they will never come and audit the business model. Even the large companies have this big, big problem. Nobody really follows this audit. Audit is the very, very important aspect for a franchisee performance. Now, franchisee, this is the last part of my today's presentation. What is the franchisee relationship? Now, relationship is very delicate in franchising, because there is a huge expectation mismatch, and it can always, and it is not it's a marathon. You cannot please anybody in the very short run, because it's a very long period when the franchisee stays with you, and over the time, they would find the benefits of why they were there with you and so on and so forth. It takes a minimum of 2 to 3, 4 years by the time the franchisee starts belongingness in the system. So what are the 10 franchisee expectations if I have to audit? And I've done a lot of work for franchisors, and this is something which we work, and they would say, I have challenges in the franchise network. And if we pick up, say, 10 franchisees and try to ask them and say, what is your question? These would be questions coming in. First, help me reduce my business expenses. It's too expensive to run that business, right? So a lot of cost is there. So they're complaining about everything. Why I had to hire so many people, why I had to spend this much, and how I want to do that, why my supply chain is so expensive, my food cost is high, my this is high. So they would always talk about their business expenses, which are going beyond their control, because expenses in businesses are always the biggest or visible area of stress, and it builds stress for people. Second is, I need more leads and sales. So they would like to put the responsibility of sales and leads on the franchisor and say, give me leads, give me sales. If you give them leads, they would complain that these leads are not converting into sales. Eventually, they want you to participate in getting their sales going or revenues coming in the structure. Reduce my operational issues. So they have smaller issues also, which they would not be able to control. So they want you to reduce those issues. Give me a better staff. I don't have a good staff. I was promised to give a better staff, but what staff you have actually provided or trained for me is not good enough. So this another big problem really starts from when franchisors go and make big claims of saying that we will provide you the staff. The day you told that you will provide the staff, you have done a biggest mistake because anyway, for employer and employee, this dissatisfaction always exists. Always an employer is thinking that I should have had better staff or better employees. An employee would say I would have had a better management or better employer. Now this is already there, and now you are taking the responsibility to fix this. This can never be fixed, right? So even if you have selected, pass the responsibility back on the franchisee to take the approval. It's the final authority of a franchisee to make the decision why he or she wants to hire whosoever they want to hire. That's very, very important part. Support me in my financial trouble. Now, when you are running a network, a franchisee would come to you for a lot of support, financial support. This month, I would otherwise have to close. This month, I have no money to survive, and you feel that it is hitting your brand and will go everywhere. Your brand would go down, and you start financially supporting the franchisee. And this is something which I've seen a lot of times people have done. They've either given minimum guarantees or made assurance of this, or given 6 months financial support, or waived out royalties, and many things. You start doing that because this would come to you one WhatsApp message in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to close down because I have no money to start or spend, and this is something which I would have to either close. I will not be able to run that business anymore. Your brand has no recall. This is another problem which a franchisor would always say, I have no recall for your brand, and nobody knows your brand. You're not investing into marketing. Invest in my local marketing. You're investing wherever you're investing in marketing, but nobody knows in my marketing. I need my marketing in my neighborhood. That's only thing. Competition is more aggressive than you are. This is another big problem. People always give you comparisons about who others are doing and what they're doing. And especially in their neighborhood, they would have opinions why that is doing better than I am doing it, because their brand is supporting them better. I am not being going supported any time. So this is also another issue. No support from your team. Your team is inefficient. They come, but they don't support me anything. And help me last is help my business. I'm tired of this business. Go out and sell for this business for me to somebody else, and I want to exit. Any person who's got into any business, I've realized, after some time he gets fatigued and he wants to move out of that business and sell that business. So that's something which is natural. So these are things when a franchisor hears, he gets on a back foot and sometimes take a very defensive approach on that. And I'm always there, I will support. But these are 3 or 4, 5 times you can say that. And after that, disbelief starts. And disbeliefs brought in even more further stress in the relationship, and the relationship started becoming sour. And it can get into litigations, it can get into disputes, it can get into other things. But what is the solution? Be a good listener, show your empathy. That's fine. You have to be a good listener. You need to listen out, but don't make statements. Don't go rush into giving answers, solutions. Don't at all give that. Show your empathy, but you cannot give solutions immediately. Second, build an incremental growth plan. You cannot fix things like this. Nothing happens like that. You can only tell him that there is an incremental plan. If somebody comes and say, I have only 2 weeks, I will give it to you, otherwise I shut the business, I would go slightly and politely say, then you are having a right choice to shut the business, because nothing is going to happen in 2 weeks. If you don't have an incremental growth plan, slowly you build the business, nothing is going to happen. Encourage peer-to-peer learning. Sometimes they don't want to listen to you. They want to listen to somebody who's done well. And this is something which I've learned. People learn from their peers more than learning from the company or a management. They don't learn. They learn from somebody because they see, oh, he's like me, but he's doing something right, that his business is working. Why my business is not working? So encourage that peer-to-peer learning. Encourage skill gap. Some people have issues with a lot of things. Like one of the networks I'm advising, I found that there is a particular franchisee who has no management experience. So I'm actually telling them that get a partner, Get a partner who has at least some management experience. Because otherwise, if you don't have any management experience, no management experience at all, how would you ever run that business, right? So it's an absolutely skill gap issue. And one should not have been brought in as a franchisee, but if they are coming in, because sometimes people show a different face when they are taking franchising. Like, for example, one of the companies I've found a brother-in-law really was a face. He took the business and then he gave it to his another brother, and that person who's running the business. They're two different personalities. They're two different personalities. One was an investor and took a decision, but the other one was actually somebody who was going to operate. But somebody who's operating is not good enough. So these are issues which can really happen. You need to speak up, use a lot of benchmark data. Always present a benchmark data. These are benchmarks which you had to follow, but because you're not following these, your results are not same. But unless you define your benchmarks, this will not really work. And humility and honesty is a way to build an entire thing. Sometimes as a franchisor, there is a limitation you have. You cannot go beyond that. There is no way you would be able to do that. You need to be open about it. You need to be open about it that beyond that, I will not be able to support. And this is a independently owned, independently operated business. The best I can do is to guide you through how this business can be run. But eventually it is your business and you have to run and operate the business. I feel that these are very, very important aspects of your, building the confidence in your franchise structure. So this was today's discussion. This was discussion on. So my team is reminding me that another webinar starts at 12 o'clock. So we have to close this quickly. So then we have to get into another webinar which starts at 12. So thank you very much, friends. So thank you very much. This is another 5th edition. So all these editions are available on Facebook Live, also available on our Facebook handle. If you want to go and repeat any of these, you can do that. If you also want us to send this presentation to you, we will be more than happy to do that. I will put my direct email ID. And if you want to reach me for any further clarification or suggestions or anything you want me to address or advise, we'll be more than happy to do that. So it's gm@gauravmarya.com, and reach our teams also if you want to take any further consultation with Franco. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time today.